Hello and welcome to the next installment of Farm to Chef Junior. And this month in July, you guys got a chance to pick some green beans. You also had a chance to pick delicious kale. And the recipe that I'm going to show you today is with kale. So we're going to do two versions of kale chips. If you've never had kale chips before, they are a delicious and extremely nutritious way to get a nice crunchy snack full of vitamins and really good for you. So these stems of kale, we're going to prepare them two different ways. The one recipe involves everything you have in your kit, and it's basically just using your extra virgin olive oil and a little bit of salt and pepper that you probably have at home. But I'm also going to show you how to prepare a cheesy, although it's not really cheese, vegan recipe of kale chips. And if you've ever bought like Brad's raw kale chips that they sell in the store, they're really expensive. They're like $5, $6 for a little tiny bag. This is basically the same recipe as they have. And you get that cheesy taste without having cheese from nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is something you can get at the grocery store. Bragg is one brand of it. I know Bob's Red Mill makes nutritional yeast. But the awesome thing about nutritional yeast is it is chock full of vitamin B, which is really good for you. And it gives this like cheesy flavor. We put this on our popcorn. Like, we love nutritional yeast. We use it all the time. So to make that sauce or powder that's gonna go on top, nutritional yeast, you would also need raw sunflower seeds from the grocery store. These aren't the raw, these are roasted, but they're unsalted. This is what's raw. So you're gonna need the raw cashews as well. And some garlic powder, or you could try using the garlic you got from Farmer Sean to maybe put in the recipe as well if you really like garlic. I know I do. So those are some other things that you would have to get at the grocery store. But to make any kale chip, I started with my oven. My oven's at 300, so it's a very low temperature oven. You guys should have about 2 bunches, about 12 stems of kale, and I don't even need a knife for the next part. Because what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this kale, hold it by the stem, just take your hands and go like this, and it's gonna come off in these pieces. And then I'm just gonna use my fingers and I'm gonna tear it into smaller pieces. So I'm gonna do this to all of my kale. I'm gonna strip the leaves and then I'm gonna tear it into kind of like 1-inch size pieces. So I'll check in with you once I have all my kale done. Okay, I have now stripped all of those kale leaves. So I'm left with a pile of stems. Now, if you don't want to use all your kale in kale chips, you can certainly set some aside, use them in soups, eat them raw. Some of my kids like to eat them raw. But I did use all of my stems that I collected. Now, these stems, we have a guinea pig, so he gets to eat these, or we would give them to our chickens or compost them. So I like to make sure somebody else gets to eat them so they don't go right in the trash. So now I'm gonna take all of my leaves that I have in here, and I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of olive oil, okay? And I'm gonna take those 2, now I'm, kind of know a count of 2 for the olive oil, but once I pour all my olive oil in, I'm now gonna take my hands and I'm gonna massage the kale leaves. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get that olive oil over all of the kale leaves, because that's gonna help me make sure that this kale, when it's cooked, is nice and crispy. And also when I make that vegan cheese powder, it's gonna help that kind of stick to the kale leaves as well. So you're just gonna kind of take it and, really get it in, make sure you're getting all the little, that's the thing about the kale, it has all these little grooves because those curly leaves, really working it in to make sure, we got one that went out, that every leaf is really nice and oily, okay? And then you're just gonna kind of let this sit for a little while. And it also kind of softens the leaves. Kale is extremely fibrous. It's a tough vegetable to eat raw. It's really good to kind of cook it a little bit to kind of break down that fiber. And the olive oil is certainly going to help do that. So I'm going to take this and just kind of set it off to the side while I start to prepare that vegan cheese sauce. Your hands are going to be oily from the massaging of the oil and the kale leaves, so you're going to have to wash them afterwards. So the next step involves using a food processor. Now, if you don't have a food processor, you could use a blender, you could use a NutriBullet to make this cheesy powder. And what I'm gonna do is I am going to start with my cashews. I'm gonna need a 1/4 cup of my cashews. Let me just get my measuring here. So a 1/4 cup of cashews. Oh, and I might have a little more, that's okay, I like cashews. And I'm going to need 2 tablespoons of the sunflower seeds. So I'm gonna put those in my food processor, the 2 tablespoons of sunflower seeds. And for the nutritional yeast, you're gonna put 4 tablespoons of nutritional yeast in here, and then the other 2 tablespoons are going to go on top of it. So that's why it says divided. So you're gonna take 4. Like I said, this stuff is awesome. It has that nice cheesy flavor. 2, 3, 4. And you'll smell it too. I love that. And then garlic powder. So 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm actually gonna put a little more than that. We're big garlic fans here at my house. And like I said, if you wanna try to experiment with the raw garlic, I mean, it's definitely gonna pack a punch. Maybe 1 or 2 cloves, like minced real tight, real small would be good for it, okay? And just a little bit of salt. So it's about 1/4 teaspoon of the salt. And the same with the pepper, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I have to turn this kind of into a fine like meal, like a paste. It's not going to get wet because it's all dry ingredients, but I want it to mix up to tiny little pieces. So I'm going to let it go in the food processor until it's a nice consistency. Okay, so now have my powder is a really nice consistency. So I'm gonna very carefully, and if you're younger, you might want your parents to do this, but this is extremely sharp. Taking out that mixing blade for the food processor, and then, so now I'm sprinkling that powder onto my kale chips, and now I'm gonna get my hands in there again, and I'm gonna mix it all around and make sure that every leaf is coated with that delicious seasoning. So I like to kind of put half of that powder in, mix it around, and then I'll put the other half to really get it in there good. Make sure I scrape down every little bit of that cheesy goodness. So this looks good now. It's got, I lost some of it. So it's got all the cheesy bits on the leaves. So the next step is all we're gonna do is we're gonna spread this on some baking sheets. So I got my baking sheets. And it's definitely gonna take 2. If you did a lot, you might actually need a little more. But the key is when I'm putting it on my baking sheet, I don't want any of those leaves to be on top of each other because then it's not gonna get as crispy. So I wanna make sure they're nice and spread out. Yeah, I think I might end up doing more than 2 sheets, and that's fine. These are such a delicious snack. We eat them very quickly here in this house. They don't last very long. I think they are good probably for like 2 or 3 days. Then they start to get not like as crispy. Ours are gone within 24 hours. Always. All right, so now I'm gonna pop these in the oven, and they're gonna go in the oven for 15 minutes. Don't forget, before you put it in the oven, to sprinkle some more nutritional yeast on top, about 1 to 2 tablespoons of this. Flip these. So I like to use a spatula. You could use a tongs. They're not that hot. They just kind of flip them over. Okay. And then I'm gonna put these back in the oven and make sure, you know, everything kind of spread out. And then put them back in the oven for 10 minutes. So after another 10 minutes, I checked them. Some of them were still a little bit soft, like they weren't crispy enough, so I gave it like another 2 minutes, and now I have perfectly crisp, so you can kind of hear that sound, very, very crisp sounding, kale chips. Let them cool for like a minute. Mine have been cooling for a minute, and you hear that crunch, and they are ready to go. So we'll sit and snack on these while they're sitting to cool. But once they're completely cooled, and it's got to be like a couple hours, I'll take whatever is remaining and put it in a nice like resealable carton. And they're probably good for like 2 days. After 2 days, they kind of lose their crunchiness. But like I said in the recipe, these don't last more than 24 hours in our house. So I hope you guys enjoyed making kale chips. Good luck making the dilly beans. I'm gonna go over pickling more next month with pickles. That's why I didn't want to record myself making that recipe as well, because it's gonna be a very similar process. It's making a brine, putting the beans in there, put some garlic in there, some dill, letting it sit in the fridge for a couple days, and then you get to enjoy them. But I'm definitely gonna go into that next month, because next month we're gonna be picking cucumbers at the farm. And with those cucumbers, we're gonna make delicious garlic dill pickles for you guys. But I hope you enjoy the kale chips. Like I said, they're such a great nutritional snack, better than eating potato chips. But I can't wait to see you again next month. And like I said, send me photos of what you make, or you guys cooking in the kitchen, because I would love to get more people to do this program. So thanks again for supporting It Green Morristown. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon at the farm. Thanks, chefs. Bye-bye.